We're into the second hour of the Mowers Club. Thanks to Wing House. You're with Scope and Missile. If you miss any of the first hour, subscribe to the Mowers Club podcast on Spotify and Apple. Couple of overnight headlines. The NRL. Raiders 20 defeat the Warriors 18. Goal kicking proved the difference. Warriors actually outscored Canberra 4-3. The Raiders end a 4-game losing streak and keep their finals hopes alive. In the AFL, the Crows upset the Bombers 115-113. The Crows kicked 9 goals in the second quarter. Bombers dominated the third to take the lead, and then the Crows came back in the fourth. Over in the golf, the Open at Royal Troon in Scotland, Irishman Shane Lowry charged late, finishing with a 69 and leading at 7 under. He won the Open in 2019. Jason Day beat best of the Aussies, had a 69 in the last round to sit at 1 under. Do you know much about Shane Lowry, Scope?
Yeah, Shane Lowry, an Irish guy, has been around for a while. I've had a little play on him, responsibly, of course, during some majors. He's a really good golfer. Justin Rose, he's won a couple of majors. He's lurking thereabouts. He's in range, and you've got to look out for Scotty Scheffler. Just see where Scotty is. Scotty's 5 shots back. It's been really difficult golf for a lot of these guys. Some tough scores for the first couple of days.
Is it just tough pin locations or tough weather conditions?
Weather conditions are variations of the pin placement, the greens, the weather that's associated with it. So the percentages these golfers have to be on compared to just like some of the best golfers in the world and still competing. That's why you've got to look at guys like Scotty Scheffler, who's thereabouts, and McIlroy. Rory had a tough first day.
Yeah,
I think he was 7 over after the first day.
Yuck.
Yeah.
Cam Smith missed the cut as well, 11 over. McIlroy missed the cut, 11 over, which is pretty impressive when you see Lowry 7 under. Those boys are shooting 11 over, and they're some of the best in the world.
Well, DeChambeau's also missed the cut. Victor Hovland missed the cut. Tony Finau missed the cut. So some huge names. And
Wowee.
Again, that's why it's one of those ones where you think, with so many big guns missing, and Shane Lowry with a pretty decent little head start could be pretty hard to bring back.
Yeah, so Scotty Scheffler, as you said, he's hovering around that 2 under. You got Rahm, Morikawa, Dustin Johnson, Brooks Koepka, all there at 1 over. 8 shots off. I mean, doable, but it's pretty tough.
Yeah, Morikawa's a hard one. He's always thereabouts. I feel like his name's...
He never wins anything, though, does he?
He's like a perennial top 10, top 20 finisher, but hasn't been able to go on with it in the last couple of years.
All right, let's jump into it. Origin 3, the Blues 14 defeat the Maroons 4. Can I just say that's the best game of rugby league this season? I'd put it up there on par with last year's grand final as the best games of the last decade, almost.
Well,
the physicality of it. You were at the ground and experienced it live, watching on TV. The physicality, the brutality, the niggle, 2-0 at halftime, but I was transfixed by this game.
Yeah, absolute warriors, these players, and they left it all out there. I always sort of joke around about, following the Maroons, but for the most part, I'm a neutral, and I was just enjoying the spectacle of it all. And at the back end, when it was 2-2, and Harry Grant gets that penalty from in front for Val Holmes to step up and make it 4-2, and I was like, I feel sorry for the Blues. I felt sorry for the Blues.
Yep.
I was like, they've fought so hard. I'm not saying that they were hard done by on the penalty. It was a lazy sort of, fatigue sort of effort by, I think it was Reece Robson that hit Harry there. But I was like, for whoever loses this game, I just feel sorry for them because both teams have just left it all out there. And you're right. It was a great game. It's completely different to the grand final. So, the way the game's played out, I always say that one of the best games that I ever played in was a 4-0 defeat. And it was actually a defeat on my end, but the quality of game was outstanding against the Roosters in the 2013 first finals game. And that had this sort of same feeling. Like, it's not like the teams weren't throwing the ball around. They were playing footy, and they were trying to score points. It was desperation in defence in really key moments. A couple of times where Bradman Best gets the first try in the 65th minute, but he could have scored a couple of times early on. Stephen Crichton would have loved to have his effort back as well. So, the desperation from all, 34 players that took part in this game was outstanding.
It blows my mind. We spoke briefly with Zach Lomax about backing up after a game like that. It blows my mind that in this day and age, in professional sport, in the money that's in rugby league, in the spectacle that is State of Origin, that players are expected to back up after that, because I could feel some of those hits through the TV screen watching at home. The brutality of that match, and then 2 days later, Mitch Barnett backs up. Less than 48 hours later, no doubt half fueled by Tui's new. Where we're at with professionalism in sport. Firstly, is that even safe?
It's not. And it was, for a lot of the ex-players, it was a badge of honour. The game's gone completely past that. I've got so much respect for what the old boys have done for the game.
Yep.
And what they did in building Origin to what it was, and then having it back up. Because at the end of the day, the New South Wales team doesn't pay your salary for the season. So it's a tough one. They miss so much footy, but there has to be a standalone period. And you're right, it's player safety. If we're talking about all these rules for HIA, how do you watch what those players did and not think that there were enough knocks in that game that would not only be deemed unsafe week to week, but for them to do that on Wednesday night and then have to back up on a Friday? It's crazy. And there's nothing to compare it to. There's nothing like that around the world where someone goes from that sort of arena and then comes back to the competition that pays their wages like we do have in the NRL.
I'm just thinking the impact on those players' bodies, even the whiplash from those tackles, the effect on the brain. Let's say that's a UFC or a boxing match. So let's say those players, they don't get knocked out, but that goes to a points decision. That's a 12-rounder or 5-round in the UFC. Points decision, they go through an absolute war. Those organisations, those commissions would never let those fighters back up 2 days later and fight again.
That's a great comp. So just say, for example, on the Sunday, the main ticket, you get a UFC fighter fighting for the belt, 5 rounds.
Heavyweight too, because that's what they are. They're heavyweights.
True, heavyweights. And then on the Wednesday, go, hey, it's not going to be a championship fight. We'll send you back and you can just do a 3-rounder on a Wednesday night. But you didn't get knocked out or anything. So no HIA. So you'll be like, come on. It's got to get to the point where...
But it's got to be taken out of the players' hands.
Yes, it does.
Because they are too tough for their own good. Like Mitch
100%.
Martinet was never going to say last night, no, I'm too sore, or no, I'm too hungover even, because they would have gone out and celebrated.
And deservedly so.
Deservedly so. But put a hangover on top of the physicality of that match, on top of the knocks he would have taken, and on top of, I remember a couple of times he collided with Pat Carrigan.
Yeah, how good was that?
Neither got knocked out, but you just know from that impact that brain is rattling around in the skull.
Yeah, for sure. Like they've done, there's research around not only players getting clean knocked out, but little mini micro concussions through whiplash, and that's why there's been all this talk around the kickoffs and that, and which is fine. I'm all like, that's what we sign up for. That's a part of the game. But forcing them to do it 2 days. With only 3 days break for 2 games is crazy.
And the other thing is, so sometimes we say, oh, it's up to the coach, and the coaches do the right thing because they rest their players, and that's admirable. But now, this weekend, you've got the Broncos, who must win every match. Kevy was great game 1 and game 2 and rested players, but now these games are must win. Guess what? All the Broncos players are backing up.
Yeah.
The Cowboys sit just outside the 8. They're now must win as well. All 5 Cowboys players backing up.
Yeah, and on the flip side of the Broncos too, like just as equally, all the Knights are going to have to play. Kalen, I know Kalen didn't play big minutes, but Gags and Bradman had really physical games against each other the entire 80 minutes of that game. And just as crucial as the Broncos are, the Knights need to win that game as well.
Yeah. Other talking points to come out of the game. Let's talk quickly about the 10 in the bins, the scuffle, no punches thrown, no players hurt. We love it as a spectacle in Origin. Ashley Klein came out and said, I spoke to you before the game and we said we didn't want any of that. Well, guess what? Guess who does want that? 3.4 million fans watching at home. We all want that. Yeah. Everybody wants that. And you're going to show that in the promos for next year. But Ashley Klein doesn't want that.
Yeah. Look, I said straight after the game, this is the way I would have loved for him to have dealt with it. Bring the boys in, grab the 2 captains. All right. No punches were thrown. At the end of the day, it was a big melee and nothing really eventuated, but grabbing someone's jersey and pushing it sort of into the bottom of the chin and letting them know who the alpha is, or trying to project that onto the opposition. It looked a little bit ugly going into the sidelines, and players that sort of got involved. Again, that's not the sort of look that we're looking for with the game as well. I immediately start thinking about the juniors, and if stuff's to happen in the lower grade games, for them to see that and realise that that's not on, right? But I would have loved Ash to come in. I think Isaiah Yeo was captain at the time. Bring Daly in. All right, boys, you got all that out of your system. This is Origin. It's a decider. It's going to be crucial if any of you guys lose any players. Go and have a chat to them. If anything like that happens again, you're gone. Because at the end of the day, he's sending them off to send a message. That's all it is.
Yeah.
And I know there's a clear-cut rule in the NRL that you can't do that stuff, but everyone knows.
Well, I thought the rule was you can't punch, not that you can't push and shove.
No, it's the third man in. So anyone who comes in and instigate, which is basically the first person to... So if you define third man in, there's a fourth, fifth man in, sixth man in.
Well, that's what I'm struggling to understand, right? So the reason that people came in from the bench is that you saw the overview shot. There was, 13 Queenslanders, including their bench, and 2 New South Welshmen. And the other New South Wales players are too far away, for whatever reason, haven't got there. That's why Cam Murray and Hamole run in to help. So if Nenai gets sent off as the third man, why don't we send off the next 7 Queenslanders that were in there before Cam Murray got there, if Cam Murray's getting sent off because he's joined? But the other thing is, and this hasn't been spoken about at all, Felice Kaufusi is on the bench for Queensland and is grabbing New South Wales players and dragging them. Now, if Cam Murray's getting 2 to 3 weeks, well, he's accepted the 2 weeks, why did Felice not get anything? Because there's plenty of footage that shows Felice Kaufusi stand up off the bench. He only has to walk a step or two. He hasn't run to join it like Cam Murray. He doesn't have to. You know why? Because Jeremiah Nenai tackled Luai into the Queensland bench.
Yep.
So they're all there. Why is Felice Kaufusi not being spoken about? And why was he not spoken about if you're going to send off Murray because he joined from the bench? Why not send off Felice as well?
Yeah, and you look at Matt Burton was thereabouts as well, because you're right. Because I think it was Harry Grant or Ben Hunt or Harry Grant picks up the ball. So he runs, and then it was pretty much every other player for Queensland but the left winger that was involved for Queensland. And because a Queensland player had the ball at the time,
New South
about
Wales
5 or 6
defending it.
defenders were defending it.
Yeah.
So therefore, again, it's not a great look, but it wasn't like the old school days where
no one was punching.
They weren't punching on the sideline. For the most part, nothing's going to ever eventuate from it. But I talked about this with Mace straight after the game. For me, it was a crucial part of the game for a number of reasons. Yeah, there were heaps of Queenslanders around Jerome. Bizza was in there. You noticed how Bizza was one of the first in there for his boy.
He posted on his Instagram as well.
Love that. Love that. And that Western Sydney boys, best mates, despite the wedding speech, that sort of let Jerome down. But I love that Bizza was the first one in there. It was a bit of push and shove. But Mace was right when he was talking about the frustration that had boiled over with regards to Cherry off the back of what Luai had done and what they had done to Cherry over the series.
Yeah, Luai was into him.
He was. And that's where Jerome, despite being 11'd out, there's a part of me that thinks Jerome loves those odds.
Yeah.
And almost feels like he's winning despite being on the ground with 10 Queenslanders over him, because he feels like that's the mental part of the game that he thrives on.
Yeah.
And he got Ches super frustrated. And I've noticed that throughout the series, and it's starting to boil over, specifically after the back end of the game too, when, Cherry lashes out at Stephen Crichton, and Stephen Crichton's pointing at his head going, I'm in your head, I'm in your head. And they would have gone in with the mindset, I'm telling you right now, the conversations would have been had where they go, hey, that stuff doesn't happen at Suncorp, not on our watch with our fans there. So the Blues strategically, with some of that push and shove, had just baited Queensland into that moment, and that's why all the Queenslanders come over. I guarantee they would have had conversations about, do not let this happen at Suncorp. No one, if it's our captain, we're all in, and that's what eventuated, and that's exactly where Jerome lives. That's where he wanted to be. He thrives off that sort of stuff.
What about, so as far as that scuffle goes, did either team gain an advantage over the other by those 10 in the bins, and did it affect their spectacle at all?
Nah. And that's a part of it. So that's why I understand why Ashley did it. It's a way of just calming everyone down, because probably in his mind, he felt like it could have tipped. Like the game was, everyone was getting really nervous at that point as well. And when you look at it, it's a back row for a back row. Poor Mitch Barnett was the guy that had to sit down because of Cam Murray.
It was pretty random, wasn't it?
So
Match basically apologised in the presser. He's like, I had to say, mate, I just had to flip a coin and you were it.
yeah. So he would have been the straight swap, I think, for Cam Murray. So I guess that would have been the obvious decision. And when, you're not going to pull off one of your decision makers, one of your halves, and poor Mitchy Barnett gets taken off, but doesn't matter. They still get the series
Can I just
win.
ask you, and try and put the bias aside, but Cherry in the game asking for a player to be sent off, and then in the post-match press conference asking or saying that he should have been sent off. After they had a player sent off in game 1 and won the game, which they'll take it, but it's a hollow victory.
Yep.
Is that a bit of a way out, saying we want to play a send-off again in Game 3? Is that the way you want to win as a Queenslander?
No, not at all. And I disagreed with him. This is, I'm not a part of the game. I'm not a part of the contest. Like I said, for the most part, I go for him, but I don't care if Queensland and New South Wales win. I want him to play well. That's all I care about. But in saying that, there's no way, if Cam Murray had been sent off for that, I would have been furious as a spectator, as a neutral, because it's the big part is just the message towards the kids. And if it was normal circumstances, a normal game, and someone did that, then I don't know. That might sound contradicting. Sorry.
Yeah.
But this is Origin,
Yeah.
And there's a part of me that doesn't want to see that in Origin, doesn't want to see that in the grand final. Now it's probably people screaming out whether they're Queenslanders going the rules are rules, but nah. If you want to calm everyone down, send a player off from each team, because both teams were equally at fault. And you mentioned the Felice Kafusi one. Yeah, he's right there. He's amongst it. He didn't have to sprint to get involved, but he's still involved. So it is what it is. And look, at the end of the day, I didn't think either, despite Cherry lashing out to begin with, like Jerome wants it just as much as he did. So I don't feel sorry for either of them in that moment as well.
No.
And then by the time it all finished up, no one had done anything crazy except tackle each other 15 to 20 metres from the spot. The worst part of the look is that it ended up off the sideline. That's it. If that had stayed on the field, and then therefore the benches wouldn't have got involved, and all the players had just ran in, there's part of me that thinks that a player might not even been sent to the bin in the end as well.
Brooksy's got some audio here of DC after the game.
Yeah, feel pretty clear that's pretty unacceptable at any level of footy, but that's just my opinion. But that's footy. They've got to make a decision.
And it has been surprising, the fallout from this game. Billy's talked about Reece Walsh getting targeted. They spoke about the refs reviewing their game. DC said he still thinks they should have been sent off. I'm surprised after a game of that physicality and that brutality that's the fallout a little bit. I can't remember Queensland really talking about reffing decisions and stuff like that in past series.
No, this is where I'll stick up for him. He was asked the question. He's the captain. To the rule book, it is what would happen in a normal game. So just say this happened in the Raiders Warriors last night, and Corey Horsburgh was, I know he didn't play in the game, but as an example, ran off the sideline to get involved in a melee, or ran from his part of the sideline to get involved in a melee, and he would have got sent off. No one would have bat an eyelid.
Yeah.
You'd just go, yeah, you shouldn't have done that, right?
Yeah.
But the circumstances and...
I just wish journos are more clued in those press conferences. We saw one finally do it with Billy when he said we're Queenslanders.
Yeah.
Most of them just sit there and go, oh, yeah, that's Billy says that.
And keep following up.
I just wish someone should have said to Daly, oh, so you think anyone that touches a player off the bench should be sent off? And Daly would obviously say, yep, definitely. Oh, so Felice should have been sent off as well. Then you go, oh no, that would have wrecked the game, because then we would have lost the player too. But sometimes, I don't know, the journos just have their preset questions.
Yeah.
Brooksy, we've got a caller, 1300 01 1170. If you want to have a chat to Scope or I anytime during the show. Eagle J is on the line. I think this is his first time, Scope. Welcome, Eagle J.
Hi, boys. How are you?
Never better, Eagle J. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. Look, the melee, that was purely in regards to the location. If the roles were reversed, we all know it wouldn't matter even if it was a club game. If the same thing happened, all the benches run in. Protect the brothers, that's going to happen. It's going to happen anywhere. So it was purely the location, because it's a bad look for Cam Murray and Amoli to run over there. But Cam Murray's a quiet boy. He's a lover, not a fighter. He's not going to do much. We all know that's all it comes down to. And I think, conspiracy theory, boys, if you were coaching, you'd say, start a blue, push them into our bench. The other bench has to come running. Otherwise, they're not sticking up for the boys.
We love a
and
conspiracy theory,
Why
Jay.
send off?
Yeah,
No, but you can imagine if they did, if he was marched, Queensland win the game.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
100%.
Yep.
Scope, was it Were you in Battle of Brookvale, Scope?
No, that was the year before I got
Year
there.
before. But Manly players ended up in that off the bench, didn't they? What was the What was the penalty there?
Ran from right off when he was on the field. Yeah, but I mean, as soon as it spills into that area, everyone's going to run in.
They have to.
Queensland just didn't have to run, like you said about Kafusi. He didn't have to run.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it.
So I think it's a good coaching ploy. Start a blue close to your bench, push them into the crowd, and you're more likely to get someone else from the other team rubbed out.
I love that, Jay.
I rate it.
Therefore, going into the game, you'd have to force the error right in front, and then make sure.
Or you could just do
in as well.
You could do the Gordon Tallis. You could do the Gordon Tallis and drag them and throw them into the bench, a la Brett Hodgson. Thanks for the call, Eagle Jay. Really appreciate your contribution this morning.
Thanks, Jay.
There he is, Eagle J. If you want to chat to us during the show, 1300 01 1170. You're on the Mowers Club with Scope and Missile. Welcome back to the Mowers Club. Thanks to Winghouse, the best seats and beers always guaranteed. You're joined by Brooksy, Scope, and I'm Missile. Scope, all right, let's keep going through this Origin breakdown. For the Queenslanders, they're missing Flegler, Tino, Cam Munster.
Yep.
Xavier Coates missed that last game.
Murray Talangi missed the last game.
Murray Talangi. Am I missing anyone else? Tom Gilbert.
Tom Gilbert will be in the team for sure if he can come back and regain
so there's,
full health.
Say, sort of 6 players missing from the Maroons. And I've heard a lot of breakdowns of these games and stuff saying that the Maroons were missing. It'd be a different game if those guys play.
Yeah, it's part
On
of
the flip side, New South Wales, I believe, at their best, missing number 1, 2, and 3 best players in the world in Cleary, Tom Trbojevic, and Latrell Mitchell.
Yeah,
if you get those 3 at those peak.
And that's been the last couple of years as well.
Yeah.
And that's coincided with what's happened in New South Wales.
I think they almost cancel each other out.
Yeah, pretty much. I think for the most part. And like I said, for the last couple of years, if New South Wales have a fully fit Tom Trbojevic, who's played parts in Origin but hasn't quite been fully healthy, in my opinion. Nace missed a lot of Origin games through either injury or suspension in the last couple of years, and Latrell's the big one. Like, the presence that he has.
What would have happened in that scuffle if Latrell was there? Because that's on his side. There would have been some ragdolling going on, I reckon.
Well, you blowing up about Felice Kafusi, you would have been stoked Felice Kafusi was in there because Latrell would have been in there straight into Felice. He would have found a couple of targets. I reckon he would have had a player in each arm. He's that strong. He would have thrived. Like, again,
loved it, yeah.
Like I said, it didn't get it too far out of control, but it would have been cool to see Latrell in there. Huge outs for Queensland, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
So we're looking at who goes back in?
Yeah, so Tino obviously starts in the front row.
Yes. Flegler's a tough one because there are serious concerns about not only Flegler getting back
So
for
sad.
Origin. I'd hate to see what's happened to Simon Dwyer with some nerve damage in and around the shoulder that affects him playing back. So first and foremost, I just want to see Tom Flegler back out on the field. Let's take him out of this right now. Tom Gilbert, he'll be there. Fully fit Tom Gilbert can recover from this ACL injury. He'll be definitely in the squad at worst on the bench, I think. The money man, and Xavier Coates and Murray Talangi, both of those guys, despite poor showings in Game 2, would have been there.
What about the biggest talking point of all 3 games? David Fifita.
It's a tough one with David Fifita because he's been healthy. He's been available.
Yeah.
So if you do get 3 or 4 troops back in the middle, just say Tino will be straight back in. If Flegler is fit, he'll be straight back in, and so will Tom Gilbert. They'll be part of the team. So therefore, there's a couple of players like your Ruben Cotter, who was playing up front, that played back row. when they had the like Tinos and Fleglers of the world. So therefore, that's a position that would be taken away from Dave. So it's going to be even harder for Dave to make the team next year.
What about, they keep saying the reason that Capewell was chosen, more effort in defence, better line speed, better clean-up work, all that sort of stuff. And the rhetoric I kept hearing is scoring points isn't Queensland's problem. They've got Reece Walsh, they've got Ponga, they've got Daly Cherry-Evans. Points isn't going to be a problem. Points, no dramas in attack. Well, to score said points, you need to get down the other end of the field. And Kurt Capewell, most runs I saw, was making negative metres. He was getting absolutely jammed over that side by Liam Martin and Stephen Crichton. I just get the feeling that, yeah, he may be a bit lazier in defence. I mean, I don't necessarily see it at club level, but he may be. But David Fafita is going to get you 8 to 10 metres each carry, just purely off size and physicality.
Yeah, there were moments, not only Capewell, but Ruben Cotter was getting licked the entire game. And he's as tough as they come.
He is, yeah.
And Paddy, he had 2 or 3 huge runs that stood out because he made 8 metres. Like, that's how hard it was for either team. Like, on the back of what Dylan Edwards was doing returning the ball and Mitch Moses kicking the ball long, I think that's where another part where Mitch Moses, that really hasn't really been spoken about, out-jeweled Daly in that part of the game, where I felt like field possession was in huge favour of New South Wales for a long periods of time. But in saying that, Queensland nearly won the game 4-2. It was a loose ball, a loose offload, a moment where they sort of just had a lapse. And it was a great try, don't get me wrong, but it was almost the exact way that Billy Slater wanted to win the game. Now, when it doesn't pan out that way and they score with Bradman Best and then a quick one from Moses, and that throws that game plan completely out the window. But for 65 minutes, they weren't that far off. And it's why I wasn't super critical of the selections with Madge in the first game. Same thing, like 64 minutes of that game, despite having 12 men, I was like, man, they're being super critical of this New South Wales team and the players that were involved in it. But they were right in it. They were right in that game. So
I want to talk about Madge, but first I want to ask you about 2 teams who are making runs for the finals now, the Broncos and the Cowboys. In seasons gone by, you've seen the Broncos and the Cowboys kick up to another level after Origin because of the confidence that their players have got out the back of a winning Origin series. Your Val Holmes, your Taulangis, for the Broncos, obviously your Reece Walshes, your Pat Carrigans, all those guys. They've now suffered an historic loss up in Brisbane. They've suffered a series loss, which most people were saying the series was dead after game 1 in Melbourne. How do players like Reece Walsh, who've never really dealt with adversity before, bounce back from this Origin series? And will this negatively impact the seasons of the Cowboys and the Broncos?
It has the potential to, for sure. A big in for the Broncos, and I mentioned it at the start of the episode, Adam Reynolds. He's a guy, look, I've never played Origin, so I don't know what it's like for these guys to come back even worse after a series loss. From being on cloud 9 the year before and everything was just clicking for the Broncos. I was listening to Katoni after the game last week. He talked about how everything just went to plan last year, and they were basically 1-17 for the most part of the year. Even around Origin, they had guys back up and they had a good break, and it just all happened for them. It's a part of your growth in the NRL, and it's going to be for Reece Walsh now. Reece Walsh has got to understand that he's going to be heavily targeted, definitely for the rest of the year and probably for the rest of his career. And they've got to be certain. He was so good last year that naturally he's got a target on his head. People want to physically impose themselves on him to take him out of the game. One, to limit what he can do with the ball. But now in this last couple of weeks, last couple of months, people were starting to see, it could be having an effect not only on Reece, but the team around him. Because
Do you think he was a bit rattled in that game 3?
I just think it was just the nature of the game. I didn't think he was crazy bad. Like, people have been criticising him because he didn't have the impact that we're all used to, but he did what was required of him. He had some really tough carries. He caught the ball. He returned it well. Like I said, it was 2-2 with 65 minutes. So defensively, he was desperate. I thought the kicking, sort of lash out penalty was really tough on Queensland. but I understand it. Like it was sort of thereabouts. There wasn't really much to it, but his intent I thought was good. But like I said, he's now got a target on his head. We used to have this thing at Manly, and it worked really well. And a lot of teams have adopted it, and it's probably been around for years. We used to call it head on the plate. You cut the head off the snake, you know, and the rest of the snake goes to bits, obviously. And you target the best player. Sometimes it's the most influential player. Sometimes it's a spot player who you know you can have some joy with by targeting them, and you know they start to cower a little bit. Sometimes it's enforcers like Sam Burgess. Sam Burgess was running for 200 metres. So we're like, every time Sam gets the ball, we've got to take Sam out. And therefore, everyone else's meters don't look that great off the back of it. So there's little mental parts of the game that are really important. And if I am playing the Broncos now, I dare say a lot of teams, NRL teams, will be looking at Reece Walsh going, let's do a job on Walshy and see what happens after that.
Last person I want to ask you about, and we'll wrap up our Origin chat, Michael Maguire. He's won a comp with Souths. He's won a comp with Wigan. He's won a Pacific Championship with New Zealand. He's now won a State of Origin series. He's broken the hoodoo. He's won the Game 3 up in Queensland. Is he the most sought-after coach in the NRL right now? And if he is, did the West Tigers make a huge blunder sacking him as their head coach?
What, they're still not reeling enough after letting go of Ivan Cleary, you reckon? Look, it's a tough one. He wasn't getting the results of the Tigers, but history says
nobody does.
Nobody does in this administration that we've seen in the last 10 years. So I know Tigers fans would be looking at results of Ivan and Madge specifically and going, geez, would love to have them at the helm right now. But in saying that, it's great experience for him to go through something like that. And what he's been able to do with Kiwis has been awesome. Like, New South Wales and New Zealand weren't the West Tigers, though. It's not a fair comparison.
Yeah.
Like, New Zealand were clearly the second best team behind Australia, but weren't far off. There's some talented players in the New Zealand team. And I guess because he had such a dramatic loss in the first game of the Pacific Championships, for the most part, the contest between the New Zealand and Australia team has been pretty decent over the last 5 years. So he didn't have a huge gap. And then, despite where New South Wales has been over the last couple of years, that's been the most frustrating part of being a New South Wales fan, isn't it? Like,
great sides on paper, but can't get it done.
On paper, if the game was won on paper for the last 3 or 4 years, then we would have just given the series to New South Wales.
Well, what about not the West Tigers? Have New Zealand missed a trick then? Because now Madge kicks the feet up. He's got 12 months till he has to do this all again. Not much to do. Could New Zealand have still used him as their head coach and gone into another series at the end of the year with him?
I was always against it. My biggest thing has been the recruitment. That's the part that I would struggle, would be really tough and for anyone that has to take on that sort of role. So I've said this all along that there are decisions. I'll give you a prime example right now. There's a guy playing for the Dolphins in the halves that New South Wales and the Kiwis both want. And I haven't heard anything from him. I don't know if he's made a decision. Sometimes they make decisions on a piece of paper at the start of the year and it's not made public. Like the NRL know his eligibility.
Yeah.
But Isaiah Katoa was about to play against the Penrith Panthers this weekend. And I guarantee that both the New South Wales Blues and the Kiwis have reached out to Isaiah to find out who he wants to play for. And even Tonga, right? Like Tonga's another example. But they're tier 2. So New Zealand and New South Wales would both want to know where the allegiance for Katoa stands. So if Madge was coaching both teams, then that'd be a really difficult conversation for him to have and approach a player like that. So, he's a clear example why I think you can only coach one of them.
Mowers, we want to hear from you. If you're a Tigers fan, would you like to still have Michael Maguire at the helm over there at Concord? 0457 736 736. You're on the Mowers Club with Scope and Missile.